Throughout the world of Pokemon, there are secret legends hidden from you and I. How people believe that there is a giant Torterra that carries the planet. How Empoleon was revered by the people of Hisui as master of the waves. The 1,000-year-old seadra that becomes a Kingdra. Bronzong being a deity that brings rain and good harvests. The true inspirations of Escavalier and Sir Fetch'd's battles. And of course, the worship of many Pokemon such as Volcarona, a Pokemon that was praised as a sun god within the lands of Unova. I've dug through Cynthia's library for what feels like an eternity, reading through centuries of documentation and investigating rumors of the people, all to bring to you the secret legends of the Pokemon world. Howdy there, I'm Krillic, and these legends, myths, and rumors are widespread throughout Pokemon's world. Some are small, and some are much larger, being inspired by real events, beliefs, or real-life legends within our own world. So of course today, I will not only bring you these deep-seated legends, but I'll also be presenting you with any of their real-life inspirations. I do have a few extras in here that I feel are more honorable mentions as well, but while I won't talk about it now, if you notice that there's a signature on the lab coat, I may have had the privilege of meeting a couple Pokemon voice actors, such as Penny, Acerola, and Clara, but they voice some much larger characters, and if you want to know more about that, come join the live streams. We'll talk about it there. We're here to talk about Pokemon, and one I wanted to begin with is the big one, the Pokemon labeled as the legendary Pokemon, Arcanine and its Hisuian form, because this actually begins with knowing that Arcanine is stated to be a legendary Pokemon in China. It has long been admired for its beauty and speed, and anyone who hears it bark will grovel before it. The source of its power is a flame blazing wildly inside of its body. Its proud and regal appearance has captured the hearts of people since long ago. They've been stated to stand aside a general, conquer an entire country, and its magnificent bark conveys a sense of majesty. And then when we add in its Hisuian forms info, stating it snaps at foes with fangs cloaked in blazing flame, and despite its bulk, it deftly feints every which way, leading opponents on a deceptively merry chase as it all but dances around them. This has always been a widely known Pokemon because of its looks, its power, and because, come on, it's just one big old floofy boy. But when we look at its Hisuian form, fit with its curled mane and horn upon its head, we seal the deal on its relation to the Kommo-o. And so I bring in our info from yokai.com, which does a fantastic job of summarizing information regarding this legendary beast from our real world, as the Kommo-o are noble, holy animals usually employed as guardians of sacred sites. They can range in size from a small dog to the size of a lion, and due to their resemblance to both creatures, are often called lion dogs in English. They have thick, curly manes and tails, powerful muscular bodies, and sharp teeth and claws. Some have large horns like a unicorn on their heads, however many are hornless. Both of these descriptions already match up incredibly well with our big old boy here, or girl. The only difference we find is that our Pokemon bears stripes like a tiger, but how do the behaviors of the Kommo-o match up to Arcanine? Well, they are fierce and noble beasts, acting like watchdogs, guarding gates and doorways in holy sites such as the entrance to Shinto shrines, and preventing the wicked from entering. They live together in male-female pairs and are always found together. In their pairs, the female usually guards those living inside, while the male guards the structure itself. So, sure, we don't have these matching pairs of male and female acting as guards, but these Pokemon are depicted incredibly often, alongside officers, SWAT, you name it. Actually, one of my favorite moments is when we see an Arcanine used within a raid to melt an entire wall as they go after Team Rocket. And when we look at Kommo-o, they were brought to Japan via Korea, which in turn received them from China, which they in turn received them from India. So theoretically speaking, Arcanine should be from India, not China. which means we have another Pokemon that goes to my long list of these are Pokemon we better see in India, or we better get an India region sometime soon. But I digress. China is where they first began to symbolize the dharmic philosophies of Indian religions. In China, these dogs are called Shishi, which means stone lion. This name is often used in Japan as well, though it only refers to the one with its mouth open. And that right there, the stone lion, is our final tie as to why they made Hisui and Arcanine into a fire rock type. It might be allergic to water now, but it truly deserves its place as a noble Pokemon. As a final note though, before we do move forward, I'm not going to be talking about the noble Pokemon as a whole in this video. I want to give them a special video for themselves in the future, as there's a lot of lore that we can dig into with them. A Pokemon I feel like I've talked about a lot recently is Ninetales, but I want to dig into something new here, because with regular Ninetales, there is a legend that claims that it is the reincarnation of 9 noble saints, 9 united noble saints specifically. And while I could talk about their inspirations with the Kitsune, I've talked about that at nauseum, and I want to first begin with these saints at least. There are the 7 sages, who are the intelligent people from all over the world, which includes Getsus, but that isn't the 7 saints. Instead, this likely refers to either the 9 worthies or the 9 noble virtues. The 9 worthies are 9 historical, scriptural, and legendary men of distinction who personify the ideals of chivalry established in the Middle Ages, whose lives were deemed a valuable study for aspirants to chivalric status. All were commonly referred to as princes, regardless of their historical titles. The pagans being Hector, Alexander the Great, and Julius Caesar, the 3 Jewish individuals being Joshua, David, and Judah Maccabee, and the 3 Christians being King Arthur, Charlemagne, and Godfrey of Bouillon. But the iconography for them doesn't really match up to the ideas that make up Ninetales. So how about those 9 noble virtues? These are moral and situational ethical guidelines, which can be summed up as courage, truth, honor, fidelity, discipline, hospitality, self-discipline, industriousness, and perseverance. And that also gets really shaky in terms of proving Ninetales is representative of all of these ideas. And with one other dex entry stating that they were instead wizards rather than noble saints, I hit a dead end. But instead of stopping there, we can look more into the specific tale of a Kitsune. The story of Tamamo no Mae, one of the most famous Kitsune in Japanese mythology, who is a 9-tailed magical fox and one of the most powerful yokai that ever lived. With credit to yokai.com once again, I have the following. Her magical powers or abilities were matched only by her trickiness and lust for power. Tamamo no Mae lived during the Heian period, and though she may not have succeeded in her plan to kill the emperor and take his place, her actions destabilized the country and led it towards one of the most important civil wars in Japanese history. For that reason, she is considered one of the Nihon Sandaiaku yokai, the 3 terrible yokai of Japan. Now, it is a super terribly beautiful but scary long story, and while I would love to read it all here, allow me to just give you the most relevant portions. She was born some 3,500 years ago in what is now China. Her early life is a mystery, but she eventually became a powerful sorceress. After hundreds of more years, she became a white-faced, golden-furred Kyubi no Kitsune, a 9-tailed fox with supreme magical power. In addition, she was an expert at manipulation. She used her charms and wit to advance her standing and influence world affairs. The whiteface, or more aptly golden fur description, matches up quite well to Ninetales. I would like to add that Kitsune in general were described as sorcerers or magic-bearing creatures, so that's just kind of a common detail. But let me tell you, this Kitsune held orgies, invented new forms of torture, brought the fall of dynasties, was a homewrecker as she convinced kings to leave their wives for her, stole ships, and restarted life disguised as a baby, and rose through the courts, feigning her intelligence and actually showing that she was incredibly intelligent despite being a child, just so that she could be another king's betrothed, as she stole his life force and aimed to take over his kingdom. Eventually, she was discovered, and before she cured the king, as she said she would do, she vanished, resulting in 80,000 men purifying themselves and setting out to slay the 9-tailed Kitsune. The warriors chased her for days and days, but the fox used her magical powers and outsmarted them time and time again, easily escaping. The army grew weary and frustration set in, and it seemed like nothing they did was working. One night, the leaders of this expedition received a dream of the kitsune as a young girl stating, "Tomorrow I will lose my life to you. Please save me." Though her trick did not work, the prophecy came true, and they did slay her. However, her evil did not end with her death. 1 year after she died, Emperor Kommo-o died, heirless. The following year, her lover and former Emperor Toba died as well. A succession crisis ignited between forces loyal to Emperor Go-Shirakawa and forces loyal to former Emperor Sutoku. This crisis eventually started the Fujiwara-Minamoto rivalry that led to the Genpei War, the end of the Han period, and the rise of the first shoguns. That's such a massive fall down from the mountain. That is, the rocks tumbled, and as if that weren't enough, her spirit haunted a massive boulder, which killed every living thing that touched it. I did not mean to make that pun there. It just kind of happened, okay, with the rocks falling. But yeah, she definitely deserves the powerful title that she bears as one of the most powerful yokai in legendary history. And we're really incredibly lucky that the closest we get to that level of power is Ninetales transforming someone into a Pokemon and forcing them to live their life as a Pokemon, to the point where even the Ninetales can't reverse the curse, as we see in Pokemon Mystery Dungeon. So, you know, be happy. We aren't quite done with Ninetales yet, as we do have its Alolan form to talk about, who was once worshipped as the deity of Mount Lanakila, and luckily we already have some leads thanks to Bulbapedia, and its mountain habitat and lore as a deity incarnation may be a reference to Poliahu, the Hawaiian goddess of snow who is said to reside on Mauna Kea, though that's about where the connections stop in regards to this goddess and our Ninetales. It is also stated that it may be inspired by Tuliketsu, a mythical fox creature of Finnish lore, whose radiant fur is said to be responsible for the creation of the Northern Lights, something that we do see often associated closely with Alolan Ninetales. And the Finnish word for aurora, Ravontule, also, I have no idea if I said that right, also literally translates to fox fires, which could be intentional as Ninetales' original form is a fire type, and Kitsune can often be described as releasing fox fires. I wanted to find out more regarding Tuliketsu, but even after looking into the online Finnish library, I found nothing at all. So if you have any information at all, please do share them in the comments, as I do love being educated by you guys as much as I share information with you. A seadra suddenly bears DNA that was otherwise not found in Horsey, and one day, it suddenly evolves into Kingdra, a great dragon that can cause catastrophic whirlpools with ease. But why? This is because some legends state seahorses are baby dragons, often being associated with its odd features to be Eastern dragons specifically. Even the Japanese word for seahorse, Tatsuno Toshigo, literally means dragon's child. This transformation from seahorse to dragon is seen in Digimon, when Babidmon turns into Dracomon, or Dracomon, in Naruto, where there is Seiryu, who is often described, or can be described, as a seahorse, and their name literally translates to Azure Dragon, and even in One Piece, within the anime only, where there is a memory-stealing seahorse who dreams of becoming a Senenryu, a dragon that lives for 1,000 years before giving birth and dying. Real lofty goals right there, but that's animals for you. You mate and you die. That's it. You continue the bloodline. This extends even further into other media, but is often a bit hidden, so you can keep your eyes out for it, and I'm not going to explain them all here. Even Skrelp and Dragalge follow this idea, though they are more reminiscent of what we would call sea dragons, who are closely related to sea horses, who are described as cousins of each other by the Shed Aquarium. But you might be asking me, where does this whole story originate from? Nothing. There is no original story that I could find, nor has there been any documented according to what I understand. It is simply the fact that seahorses look like Eastern dragons naturally, which that implies that they created the idea of the Eastern dragon and then came across a seahorse in real life at some point. And I guess from there, they decided to give the seahorse the name Dragon Offspring. But the closest we could get to a story that would help us understand why Kingdra and Dragonite battle is one of the dragon gods who represent the mount or chthonic forces of the 5 regions' highest deities. It is also one of the 4 symbols of the Chinese constellations, which are the astral representations of the Wufang Shandi. The Azure Dragon represents the east and spring season. And to wrap all of this in one neat little bow as best as I can, and explain why Kingdra causes such large whirlpools, is because this ties to the Naruto whirlpools, the Naruto no Uzushio, or tidal whirlpools in the Naruto Strait, a channel between Naruto in Tokushima and Awaji Island in Hyogo, Japan. They are strongest during the spring tide, where the speed of the water may reach 20 kilometers an hour, 12 miles per hour, creating vortices up to 20 meters or 66 feet in full diameter. And just for fun, yes, this is the real-life inspiration for Naruto Uzumaki's name, with Uzumaki literally meaning whirlpool. So we've got a lot of ties going on. We pulled in a bunch of anime, and we're just gonna move on. I did not expect to have to talk about Jynx here, but in certain parts of Galar, it has been feared and worshipped even, being called the Queen of Ice. The Jynx and Galar are said to have beautiful and delicate voices and have a fan base dedicated to them, and once again, I ask myself and I ask everything, why? Well, when I dig deeper, we find a connection to another ice-based friend with immense power within the original Pokemon Snap game, as Articuno's egg is only hatched through the assistance of 2 dancing Jynx. So, outside of that, there is no real-life tie even for this one, but considering Jynx's abilities to step in snow without leaving an impression, their ability to compel others to dance just by wiggling their hips, its ability to sound close to the human language, actually, just in general, they sound close to humans according to lore, and its singing in frigid environments, all of which would be occurring within the harsh climate shift of Galar, we can pretty much understand and attribute all of this as to why they would garner the title of the Queen of the Ice. They seem to just exist as human-like creatures that are just beholden to the power of ice itself. A legend in many ways, we have Gyarados, who you likely know the basic idea behind, but do you know the full story of the carp that leaps over the Dragon Gate? You see, Gyarados is in multiple episodes in the anime where it is, or has been around, the center of attention as a legend. And of course, its mega form resembles what we see as the unnamed water legendary Pokemon. In the games, there have been people who refuse to use it, as far as you and I go, within Nuzlocke due to its versatility and sheer power. And I can nearly guarantee anyone who sees it when they're playing through the games as it appears on the opposite side of the screen ready to battle you, takes a sharp breath of fearful air in preparation for the potential destruction Gyarados will bring to your team. Because, at least I will admit, I do. From various sources that seem to agree, according to Chinese mythology, the Dragon's Gate is located at the top of a waterfall cascading from a legendary mountain. Many carp swim upstream against the river's strong current, but few are capable or brave enough for the final leap over the waterfall. If a carp successfully makes the jump, it is transformed into a powerful dragon. A Chinese dragon's large, conspicuous scales indicate its origin from a carp. The Chinese dragon has long been an auspicious symbol of great and benevolent magical power. The image of a carp jumping over Dragon's Gate is an old, enduring Chinese cultural symbol for courage, perseverance, and accomplishment. Historically, the dragon was the exclusive symbol of the Emperor of China and the 5-character expression Liu Tiao Long Men. I'm sorry if I butcher other languages, I try. Which was originally used as a metaphor for a person's success in passing very difficult imperial examinations required for entry into imperial administrative service. On the Yellow River of the Hunan is a waterfall called the Dragon Gate. It is said that if certain carp called the Yulong can climb the cataract, they will also transform into dragons. Every year in the 3rd month of spring, they swim up from the sea and gather in vast numbers in the pool at the foot of the falls. It used to be said that only 71 of these carp could make the climb in any year. When the first succeeded, then the rains would begin to fall. This Dragon Gate was said to have been created after the flood by the god emperor Yu, who split a mountain, blocking the path of the Yellow River. It was so famous that throughout China, there was a common saying that a student facing his examinations is like a carp attempting to leap the dragon gate. Hunan is not the only place where this happens though. Many other waterfalls in China also have the name Dragon Gate, and much the same is said about them. Other famous dragon gates are on the Wei River, where it passes through the Longshu Mountains, and at Xin in Shaanxi Province. This is all why we see Magikarp at the base of multiple waterfalls, why in Legends Arceus there is a waterfall where at the top we get a slew of Gyarados, and even in Snap, how a mission is to get a Magikarp to climb up and make it over the top of the waterfall in order to make it evolve. This is a deep-seated legend for one of the most legendary, non-legendary Pokemon of all. And before we do continue, I just want to say thank you so much for watching. If you made it this far and are enjoying this, make sure you do subscribe. In addition, I am one person, so if I miss anything that you think is vital, if you have any arguments against anything what I say, or you just want to share some awesome fun facts related to myths or legends, or even cryptids for that matter, share. I do love to read every comment, even if I don't make the time to respond in full. Plus, comments and watch time are the best ways to boost the reach of a video and a channel as told by YouTube itself. And lastly, if you'd like to go the extra mile, you can donate via super gifts or even become a member of the channel for as little as $3 a month. Becoming a member gives you behind the scenes info, early access to videos, and you get to hear me shout out your name at the end of every single video. So once again, thank you, and back to our main topic. The Pokemon on the thumbnail, Dragonite. It is known to engage in fierce battles with Kingdra whenever they meet. It has been referred to as the Sea Guardian and the Sea Incarnate. As such, there are many ships with figureheads decorated with its look. This is not something you do lightly. This is something reserved for those that are great. An homage to gods even in some cases. Now, Dragonite flies faster than the speed of sound. It is a kind-hearted Pokemon with human-like intelligence, saves humans from drowning, and leads lost ships to safety while even bearing the ability to bring down a wrath so powerful it can affect the weather itself. Just imagine All Might as a Dragonite is all that I'm saying. But have you ever wondered why this beast of a Pokemon's shiny is jade in color? Well, I believe I do have the answer to that. But we only find it by taking account of the serpentine shape we have with Dragonair, as through this shape, we can find what is known as the Jade Dragon. From the National Museum of China, the Jade Dragon is carved from dark green Zhuyan jade. The body is smooth and clean. It has a long snout and thin eyes, the mane is floating, and the body curls like a hook. Vivid in shape and exquisitely carved, it has the reputation of China's #1 dragon. Both the word long dragon in the Oracle Bone inscriptions of the Shang Dynasty and the Jade Dragon unearthed from the Fuhao tomb show that the dragon is a giant, horned, big mouth, and curved body mystical creature. Something that we can see through our Pokemon here, horn and all. And while the Dragonite line is simply known as the Dragon Pokemon, they have also been called the Mirage Pokemon, as its existence was originally thought to only be a myth in the form of Dratini, and Dragonair is also called the Divine Pokemon. They hold a great power to them throughout the world, and it shows. So, if you ever set sail upon the waters of the world, bear Dragonite as your guardian, and may the weather be ever so kind to you. Simply put, within the lands of Alola, Slowking is known as the Sage of the Sea, while also being a creature that will occasionally match its wits with Oranguru by the beach, which Oranguru is considered the Sage Pokemon, so we have the Sage of the Sea and the Sage of the Forest, but there is no Sage of the Sky that I could find. The closest I could find is a Pokemon that I will have fun talking about later. Otherwise, this is rather vague in its entry, and it's too broad for me to narrow down into something that I feel is reliable enough to tell you about. Instead, we're going to move on to the unknown. Creatures I will label as a honorable mention, but anyone who has delved into Pokemon theories will find their existence is very much one of legend. They first appeared in the modern day after the radio tower in Johto was established, but at least within the anime, they have been established to have existed as a potential counterpart of the Latin alphabet, having existed since the beginning, if not before written language, and they bear a hidden power that when brought together can warp reality, open up dimensional doorways, and even have their own dimension. To take this even further, we of course see them when we meet Arceus. They appear alongside Suicune in the Pokemon Crystal intro, which, mind you, Suicune is also known to be the closest to Ho-Oh in terms of relationships, and yet despite everything we know very little truly about the Unown. They are unknown. Many people have claimed they are the Thousand Arms of Arceus, but the Arceus we know is the one of the Thousand Arms as confirmed by the Pokemon Legends Arceus game. Others have claimed that they relate in some capacity to the Ultra Beasts, but this is still something that doesn't quite line up and is a little bit of a stretch. Though, there is one thing I wanted to look into, and while this doesn't completely conclude anything, the Unown are the only creature with the base stat total of 336. These base stat totals have told us stories, like Whirlipede, the wheel-shaped Pokemon, being 360 with its base stat total, or all the Ultra Beasts having the same total excluding Poipole and Naganadel. So why 336? What does 336 mean? Well, considering their relation to Arceus, and Arceus being God, I immediately thought of angel numbers. Numbers that are rumored in our world to be signs from the angels themselves to us. Messages that may tell us about disaster or fortune on the horizon. So what does 336 mean? Well, let's see if this sounds familiar to you and a certain movie in which the Unown appear. Number 3 brings its energies of self-expression and communication, optimism and enthusiasm, skills, talents, friendliness and sociability, growth, expansion, and the principles of increase. Manifesting and manifestation, that's an important part. When expressed to the fullest, number 33 focuses upon the spiritual uplifting of mankind. Number 6 relates to providing and provision, possessions, status, and the monetary aspects, service and domesticity, love of home and family, caring and nurturing, responsibility and reliability, honesty and integrity. Angel number 336 as a whole brings a message of reassurance that your material and monetary needs will meet you as you serve your life purpose and fulfill your spiritual destiny. This feels incredibly representative of what happened with Molly in the Entei movie, and as though Unown are the message from Arceus itself, especially as Arceus, as told through a number of stories, as told through the old verses, the goal is for humanity and Pokemon to be equal, to fulfill their destiny of being one with the planet and coexisting. And even if this is all just one big coincidence between this and adding in the biblically accurate Unown that you can see in the Spell of the Entei movie, it is far too much of a coincidence to simply ignore. And when I first found out about it, it kind of blew my mind a little bit. So, you know, it's fun. Another short and sweet one is that Skarmory is a popular Pokemon used for heraldic designs as told by the Shield Pokédex. These are armorial bearings or coat of arms meant to represent a number of different things from families, ranks, ceremonies, or overall just achievements. And with Skarmory's feathers being used as swords in the past, we can understand why it would be paid homage to in the history of the world. A Pokemon that is directly translated as Helgar, but known to us as Houndoom, or at least some of us, I suppose, depends on who's watching, is a Pokemon that was so feared that people thought its howl came from the Grim Reaper itself. To be fair, it does bear bones on the surface of its body, and even its mega form seems to resemble that of a full skull, rather than just the skull pendant that it has like on its neck, chest thing. And of course, this can all relate to Hellhounds or even Cerberus, amongst many other Hellhound-like possibilities for its inspiration. So it's fairly cut and dry, especially as there is a general history of associating Doberman with the Grim Reaper or Hell itself in our real world, despite them just being incredibly smart and loyal guard dogs. The armor Pokemon Tyranitar is not stated to be anything more than a pseudo-legendary. No myths stated of it, no tall tales. Instead, only facts are the remaining surviving threads that tell us of its power. Tyranitar is always looking for battle and will not flinch at anything, though it ignores opponents that it thinks are not worth its time. Its power is so devastating that it can forcefully crush anything using one of its hands. If enraged, it sets off outstanding earthquakes that can completely change the entire landscape, destroying houses and mountains, often forcing cartographers to draw up new maps. It lives in nests made from demolished mountains. Imagine being anybody in the lands in which Tyranitar exists, or even in the modern age where nobody may have even seen a Tyranitar. This is a creature that only comes into existence long after Larvitar eats an entire mountain's worth of dirt and evolves even further after spending its time as Pupitar, a creature that brings great ruin and destruction to the lands across as a Tyranitar. And while the games and anime don't always show the sheer size, the immaculate size and power of this Pokemon, the manga absolutely does, with towering titans like Tyranitar toppling townships in tumultuous destruction. Yes, I did that as a little bit of a flex, but imagine the campfire stories, the tall tales, the people who believe that Tyranitar is nothing more than a hoax, only to see it rise up and leave nothing behind but stories, warnings for future generations, how even the cartographers are unsure if the lands naturally changed or if a Tyranitar came through here. Entire generations would treat it as a cryptid, only for it to show that myth is reality. And I love that about this Pokemon. Another Pokemon I feel like I've spoken on recently is Shiftry itself, a Pokemon living in tropical jungles who brings in cold winds when it appears, which explains why one of its level 1 moves is Hurricane. Hot, humid air, bringing in the cold air, Hurricane. But more importantly is that the folklore states that Shiftry was once an evil bird Pokemon before its wings and beak were replaced as punishment for its misdemeanor. With its appearance and its shiny really leaning into it, this is very much directly related to the tale of the Tengu, or at least one interpretation of it, because the Tengu themselves have taken on a slew of different forms in different stories, from monstrous birds to monkeys and just simply human-like individuals with long noses, red skin, and then maybe they also have wings. But they are, by all means, still yokai. They can be pranksters, they can be mountain guardians, providers of wisdom and strength. The reason a tree falls for no discernible reason in a forest as it fell to a gust of wind only, and so much more. So only time will ever truly tell us if Shiftry has an alternate form fit with a beak and wings, or if this is simply another rumor, as this being guards the forests in which it resides. Flygon's wings make a singing sound when they are flapped, earning it the name the Desert Spirits, which it uses to attract prey before striking them in their stranded isolation. This Pokemon we can consider then to be the living incarnation of something we have in real life known as the Singing Sands, and I'll see if I can let that sound play now while I talk about it. It's a little haunting depending on which one I find on YouTube for you, so I won't make you listen to it for long because I don't want to listen to it for long. Now, the Singing Sand, also called the Whistling Sand, Barking Sand, Booming Sand, or Singing Dune, is sand that produces sound. The sound emission may be caused by wind passing over dunes or by walking on the sand. Certain conditions have to come together to create it. 1. The sand grains have to be rounded between 0.1 and 0.5 millimeters in diameter. The sand has to contain silica. And 3. The sand needs to be at a certain humidity. The most common frequency emitted seems to be close to 450 Hz. There are various theories about this singing sand mechanism. It has been proposed that the sound of frequency is controlled by the shear rate, which, if I remember correctly, is basically how fast is like everything moving. How fast is like the top layer or the cleavage from one piece of sand shredding across the other like pieces of sand, for a super basic explanation of it. Others have suggested that the frequency of vibration is related to the thickness of the dry surface layer of sand. These sound waves bounce back and forth between the surface of the dune and the surface of the moist layer, being a lower layer typically, creating a resonance that increases the sound's volume. The noise may be generated by friction between the grains or by the compression of air between them. It's a fascinating phenomena, and Flygon is here to be our in-world explanation as to why it even occurs in the first place, rather than being a mystery. Taking up the mantle that Gyarados dropped in its beta, we have Whishcash the Namazu. This one is pretty clear on the surface, as we have a catfish that most people associate with the move Earthquake. This is exactly what the Namazu is, and Whishcash's Japanese name is literally Namazun. In Japanese mythology, it is a colossal fish that lives beneath the earth, right under Japan. It is believed that whenever Namazu moves, the earth trembles. This gigantic catfish is therefore responsible for the earthquakes that have shaken the country throughout its history. This began to replace the idea that dragons were the cause of these earthquakes, becoming popular by 1855 with the Great Ansei Earthquake. And once again, from yokai.com, because I love them so much, I have the following. The reason catfish came to represent earthquakes was due to a large number of witnesses observing catfish behaving oddly, thrashing about violently for seemingly no reason, just before the earthquake. Rumor quickly spread that catfish had some kind of ability to foresee the coming disaster. Since then, the catfish has regularly appeared as a symbol for earthquakes, either as the cause or as the warning sign of the coming disaster. Recent studies, though, I don't know how recent these studies are, have shown that catfish are in fact very electrosensitive and do become significantly more active shortly before an earthquake hits, showing that there is more to this myth than meets the eye. I was also informed that they have a kind of really cute version of them in Final Fantasy, the Namazu, so here you go, a little cherry on top of this amazing bit of information. Claydol within Alola has incredibly interesting Pokédex entry when we look at Ultra Moon. The ancient people who made it apparently modeled it after something that descended from the sky. It fires beams from both arms. This is very reminiscent of our Pokemon Celesteela, having similar body shapes, the ability to fire energy from their arms, and to bring it all together, Baltoy and Celesteela are only obtainable within Haina Desert in Pokemon Ultra Moon. It's a fun bit of information that I found out during my dive through the longest Pokemon iceberg I have ever found, and I had to include it here as at least an honorable mention. Plus, this serves as something sacred, as clay itself is not easy to obtain within Alola without at least our wonderful Earth Horse, assumedly due to Hawaii itself not having a lot of readily available clay. This is why, in the real world, we find that their archaeology doesn't uncover clay pots or pieces in general as often as other areas in the world. And with Celesteela being a being from the sky that is very much inspired by the Moon Princess Kaguya Hime, who was even discovered inside a stalk of glowing bamboo, it only makes sense that they would have made Claydol in its divine image. Also, once again, I'm going to grace your eyes by showing you baby Celesteela. Look how cute that thing is. Melodic, crowned royalty of the waters of Pokemon, is said to be the most beautiful of all Pokemon. It seems to be highly regarded in Kitakami itself, with Mosui having it on manholes, it appearing in the crystal pool, with Feebas appearing in a cave below the pool, and it appears as an Illumina Pokemon and Snap. Mind you, even the island it appears on, Belusilva Island, is derived from the Latin word for beautiful. So, why is this Pokemon so highly regarded? Well, they are very directly inspired by the Oarfish, otherwise known as the Doomsday Fish. In some areas of the world, these creatures are seen as being harbingers of bad news, particularly disasters or destruction. The legend is that if you see an Oarfish, it is a warning sign from the higher powers that disasters such as earthquakes are soon to occur. According to numerous news reports, before Japan's 2011 earthquake, one of the most catastrophic in history, a total of 20 Oarfish washed ashore. While many legends may surround these creatures, it is unusual for humans to encounter Oarfish. They primarily reside within the deep sea, so if one is spotted close to the surface, it typically indicates that the creature is sick, dying, or at least very, very disoriented, maybe too long of a night of partying. Now, when I look at a place such as Kitakami, we find it could absolutely be at risk of greater flooding, earthquakes, and tsunamis. Ultimately, earthquakes can be a cause of tsunamis, as all it takes is for there to be a large displacement of water, which can then occur due to volcanic eruptions as well, landslides on land or in water, and more, as then the water, after being displaced, is replaced in an incredibly rapid rate. These Oarfish would then be affected by all of this, resulting in their unfortunate displacement onto our shores as they pass away and wash up, or are just thrown up, floundering all over the place. So theoretically speaking, if Pokemon really wanted to dig into natural disaster, earthquakes, they could show a slew of Melodic appearing on land one day to show that a great doom is headed our way. While we're on the topic of great omens, let's talk about the OG disaster Pokemon itself, Absol. It lives in the mountains far from civilization, and it rarely ventures down from its alpine home. Using its horn, it is able to sense even subtle changes in the sky and the land to predict when a disaster will occur, and will try to warn people when one is approaching. It is known to protect fields from natural disasters as well. This often has the unfortunate effect of Absol itself being blamed for the disaster, notably by the elderly. The hatred for Absol started years ago by superstition surrounding around it, and despite this, others are interested in its ability to predict disaster. It has been referred to as a bringer of doom. It can move as swiftly as the wind, and is said to have a lifespan of up to 100 years. What I also love is the map-based storytelling we do get, because wherever we find Absol, I found that we find it one route away from potential doom. Route 110 in Hoenn, which is home to the ancient tomb housing Registeel and the Scourge Slab housing Heatran. Route 213, appearing in a swarm where we get the news of Team Galactic blowing up Valor Lakefront in Diamond and Pearl. In Platinum, it sits at the summit of Mount Coronet, the area right before the peak in which Dialga and Palkia would be summoned. Route 13 and the Giant Chasm, which is where Kyurem rests in Unova. They also have it, or appear, on Route 14 before the Abundant Shrine, which houses Landorus, and Route 23 where we find Azelf. This does appear to fall apart a little bit as their Route 8 encounter in Kalos seems to not bear any significance to my understanding, but then we follow that with their encounter on Mount Lanakila, which is in Alola and is a sacred place, Tapu Village, which was destroyed by Tapu Bulu because people created the Mega Mart there and ruined the natural life to some degree, and then a number of places in Galar such as the Giant's Bed, which is housing Regigigas. Absol is more than a Pokemon warning us about dangerous Pokemon or events in its tales, in its Pokédex entries. It is actually actively continuing to warn us as the player within the games, and is a perfect little example of storytelling that is not told to us directly. Regular Salamence, I sleep. Mega Salamence, I scream for my life. According to Mega Evolution Special 2, the hard yet very flexible properties of its wings allow them to be used as blades in mid-air battles. The stress of Salamence's vaunted wings becoming misshapen in its Mega Evolution aggravates it to the point of rampaging. This fuels its already brutal nature and makes it likely to turn against the trainer who raised it. Because of this, Mega Salamence is feared as the blood-soaked Crescent. Anything and anyone in its path gets sliced in two by its blade-like wings, posing no interruption in its flight. Very rarely does Pokemon speak about blood. Most often, it speaks about them with creatures who drink blood, like the Zubat line, Gorbis, or Gliscor, who are the only ones to do so. Trust me, I did the Pokemon food chain. I know that. Otherwise, the only other time I could think of, at the time of writing at least, is that when it mentions Cacnea's blood turning to sand when it evolves into Cacturn. But this is very, very different. We are speaking of a Pokemon that goes on a rampage and is nicknamed as a creature that soaks its wings in the blood of the fallen due to the sheer amount of foes it has sliced in half. Though, this is a fantastic rumor, because it already has red wings right off the bat, immediately instilling fear into anyone who sees it in the Pokemon world. It just feels kind of like anime for some reason. Oh no, I can't believe it. The demon is real. I thought it was just a rumor. The blood-soaked Crescent! Nothing else is, here to explore that is actually relevant, but it's still a significant title to give to a Pokemon. There are a lot of titles Pokemon are generally given, one of them being the Butterfly of the Sea for Luminion, due to its shining vibrance, but that doesn't feel like a legend in the end, so I don't really include that here. Or Crocodile being the Bully of the Sands, so we're just kind of not really talking about them here, and we get to move on. It's turtles all the way down, baby. For with Torterra, ancient people believed the ground contained a gigantic Torterra living underneath. This is even phenomenally shown with the massive Torterra shown within the Pokemon Detective Pikachu movie. But this is something that is even shown through the likes of Terrapagos and its full terrestrialized form. But we're not here to talk about what Pokemon calls legendary. I'm saving that for another time. This, though, is something that is actually given life through stories in India, China, North America, and South America. For the Hindu story, a vulture, whichever has only little strength, rests in the sky holding a snake in its beak for a parahara 3 hours. Why can the deity, in the form of a tortoise, who possesses an inconceivable potency, not hold the earth in the sky for a kalpa, a billion years? For China, in the Chinese mythology, the creator goddess Nua cut the legs off the giant sea turtle Ao and used them to prop up the sky after Gong damaged Mount Buzo, which had previously supported the heavens. For North America, there is an account that goes as the following. When the father was explaining to them, some other individuals, some circumstance of the passion of our Lord, and speaking to them of the eclipse of the sun and of the trembling of the earth, which was felt at that time, they replied that there was talk in their own country of a great earthquake which had happened in former times, but they did not know either the time or the cause of that disturbance. There is still talk, said they, of a very remarkable darkening of the sun, which was supposed to have happened because the great turtle which upholds the earth, in changing its position or place, brought its shell before the sun, and thus deprived the world of sight. And in South America, there is some folklore that bears some similarities to the world turtle. It is a creature so large that it contains many countries, and that one side of it experiences a different season than the other side. It's always interesting when we get stories such as these and so many more that follow the same idea without these people contacting each other outside of that one instance. Science, religion, myths, legends, and so much more is incredibly fascinating when we see it spring up throughout the world seemingly from nothing, yet similar enough to each other to make you scratch your head. You can look at like who made the first hamburger for a really basic example that makes it a little bit weird, or who created the first soft serve ice cream and stuff like that. It truly makes you wonder if life really is just one big beautiful coincidence or if there is a greater power at play. And I love that mystery about our existence sometimes. Other times the glutton of knowledge that I am wants to throttle the universe itself and like scream, give me the answers, please, I need to know before I die. But moving on, straight from the Pokédex of Pokemon Legends Arceus, since ancient times, Empoleon has been revered by the people of Hisui, who call it the Master of the Waves. Its wings are a match for even master-crafted blades, and penguins are just super well loved by Japan, and Empoleon can swim incredibly well, and there's nothing too deep here or surprising to my knowledge, so nice and short. Here's another one that I talked about deeply in detail as I bring to you Mismagius. Mismagius usually shows up without warning to cause havoc on unsuspecting humans or Pokemon. It is powerful. It can use advanced incantations for various purposes, such as causing misery or happiness, and due to this, people often seek to capture it as if their lives depend on it, solely to make someone fall in love with them. They really need to go by the genie rule of you can't bring somebody from the dead, you can't force somebody to fall in love with you. I don't remember the third one. I'm a little bit of a rule breaker myself, so, you can't expect me to remember rules. There is a custom on inviting it into one's home, usually to ward off misfortune with its spells. However, this can also lead to disaster should it ever be provoked. People that hear its cries will usually receive headaches and hallucinations, and as shown in the anime, in the episode Malice in Wonderland, Mismagius can put its victims to sleep, cause them to enter a strange dream world without their noticing, but if the Mismagius is knocked out or it falls asleep, the victim will wake up. It can sometimes be found roaming around lakes and mountainsides at night. And it is a witch in the end, a spellcaster through and through, so we could name a million different stories and a million different legends about them, and we could have some fun with it. Though it still will always weird me out that anyone would capture it to force anybody to fall in love with them. That just rubs me the wrong way. When angered, Bronzong lets out a warning cry that rings out like the tolling of a bell. It can summon rain clouds, which earned it the nickname Bringer of Plentiful Harvests, and led to some referring to it as a deity since ancient times. I would have never in a million years had guessed. If you put me on a game show right now, and you said, was Bronzong, or you asked, was Bronzong ever considered a deity? I would only say yes because I would doubt myself. Because I would not actually genuinely believe that Bronzong would ever be considered a deity, especially in ancient times. But it is, and its cry is also believed to have the power to open a hole leading to other worlds. In some of the dex entries, it even claims that its ability to open portals to other worlds is what allows it to bring rain into the lands. And it does learn Rain Dance as the last natural level up move it can learn, being at level 56, which of course is meant to stand out and be representative of our story here. It is said, though, that Bronzong is based on Dotaku, Japanese spells that it looks exactly like, and which were believed to have been used to pray for good harvests. They are often decorated with patterns representing nature and were buried, occasionally with bronze mirrors and weapons in isolated locations, which explains why Bronzor is likened to be that of a mirror when it's polished. Honestly, it seems like Bulbapedia had all of this nice and solved for me, as it then also states the following. Bronzong, and the fact that it evolves from Bronzor, also seems to be based on an old Japanese myth present in the book Kwaidan, Stories and Studies of Strange Things by Lefcadio Hearn. The priests of Mugenyama wanted to forge a bell for their temple, so they asked the local women to donate their bronze mirrors for this purpose. A woman contributed her mirror, but later regretted it. Because of her repentance, the mirror wouldn't melt in the furnace until she... Whoa, I don't think I could say that on YouTube. Until she did something to herself that people should not do to themselves as she passes to the afterlife of her own volition. She said, though, right before she did so, that whoever would break the bell would be given great wealth by her ghost. A multitude of people tried to break the bell by ringing it furiously, so the tired priests rolled it down a hill into a swamp in frustration. Bronzong's Pokedex entry may also refer to, at least within the Pokemon Diamond Pokedex, to the Kamoi-Wakura site, where multiple Dotaku were discovered during construction of a farm road in 1996 by a heavy machinery operator who accidentally struck the cache of Dotaku while excavating the site and dated to approximately 2,000 years ago in the Yayoi period, which the first time we run into them, isn't that like right under Cycling Road, which matches that even better? Either way, we have a perfect little bow wrapped on both the legend and history of this Pokemon, one that I definitely very much overlooked for years until now. I love the story of Spiritomb in the games, and I love where its inspiration draws from, mainly because I am a little bit biased towards Buddhism and Zen stories, or at least Buddhist and Zen stories. Spiritomb is formed by a collection of 108 spirits, some of which are ill-natured. This collection of spirits is known for its misdeeds. Thus, as a punishment, the spirits were trapped to its odd keystone by a traveler using a mysterious spell. Several Pokedex entries state that Spiritomb was sealed roughly 500 years before the present time. Some people, considering that the number 108 is often shared, or is rather shared, with Hisui and Typhlosion, may have theorized, and I am one of those people, that Hisui and Typhlosion may have been the original individual who sealed Spiritomb within the odd keystone. But once again, Bulbapedia has it nice and clear as to the basic story of this, and we could dig deeper in a moment once we get our grounding. Spiritomb may be based on the Jibakure, a spirit bound to a single place, or a Dildagast, a Norwegian folklore spirit that is forced to haul around a boundary stone as punishment for moving one while it was alive. It may also be based on a Buddhist tradition performed on New Year's Eve in Japan, in which a bell is rung 108 times to chase away the 108 temptations in order to achieve nirvana or enlightenment. The wisps of spirits surrounding its face also resemble a set of prayer beads, which is a possible reference to the japa. To explain why the number 108 is even used, we have 6 senses. Each individual sense can be experienced in 3 ways, either negative, positive, or neutral. This then makes 18 feelings, 6 senses, times 3. These 18 feelings can either be attached to pleasure or detached from pleasure, making 36 passions. This is 18 feelings times 2, 36 passions. These 36 passions can be formed in either the past, the future, or the present, making a total of 108 defilements of the mind. 36 passions times 3 equals 108 defilements. And because I have now blasted through over 400 chapters of One Piece, because I might be slightly addicted, this is something that is brought up in the Skypiea arc around Enelu in One Piece. You know, the guy that is modeled after Eminem. I didn't know this, and my friends had to point this out explicitly to me, and I was a little embarrassed. But either way, the arc makes mention of these numbers, but doesn't quite make it to 108 defilements. That's just your little pop culture reference as to what references this stuff. And Spiritomb may also be based on the Water Margin, one of the classic Chinese novels, which is also very well known in Japan. In the novel's first chapter, a foolish army marshal orders the removal of a stone monument guarded by monks for generations, causing the spirits of 108 demons sealed therein to be released. These 108 souls, having atoned for their sins, become the 108 Stars of Destiny. They are then reincarnated centuries later as 108 outlaws, the heroes of the novel. And the foolish removal of this stone is even paralleled by Ash in the anime, as he then has to work to reseal Spiritomb. But it's through this that I beg genuinely the Pokemon Company to create a mega form of Spiritomb, or some kind of variant of some kind, that is the purified version of it. You can make it a Ghost Water type as a reference to the title of the Water Margin, or even make it a Fairy Dark type to let it represent the purity of the darkness that it used to represent, or let the darkness be expunged from it and let it be a Ghost Fairy type. I believe that would then make 3 total Ghost Fairy types, to my knowledge. Either way, the last part there is just personal thought, but I can still hope for it, just like I can hope for a genuine Plankton Pokemon, since Plankton are mentioned many times in a number of different Pokédexes, but I digress. Lucario has been a fan favorite for an incredibly long time, and when you look at the stories of this Pokemon, you can see why. I will admit this feels a bit like it's not a secret legend, but hey, let's talk about it anyway. Lucario debuted in Lucario and the Mystery of Mew. He belonged to Sir Aaron and was sealed away in his staff for 1,000 years. Ash later released him during a festival, and he helped guide him to the Tree of Beginning after Mew teleported Pikachu there. However, Lucario sacrificed himself to save the Tree of Beginning. This would be the second movie in which an individual passes away and is not revived. Technically the second and third, since Latios was the first time, while Sir Aaron had also passed away before he sealed away Lucario, or right after sealing away Lucario. But it is through Lucario's sacrifice that the Tree of Beginning lives on, and that tree is very much compared to the great tree Yggdrasil, the World Tree. And to kind of really solidify the significance of this legend and why Lucario is such a big point of this, why their sacrifice was necessary, is because the Tree of Beginning is described as a rock formation that appears to be a gigantic tree. It is actually a living organism made up of crystal that feeds on sunlight. It has a symbiotic connection with a Mew that lives within it. The Tree of Beginning is a pristine environment and is home to many kinds of ancient Pokemon thought to be extinct. It has a circulatory system of sorts that distributes nutrients to the crystals throughout its body. It technically has a complex antibody system that takes the form of fossil Pokemon which attacks humans and machines within it, and even has guardians in the form of the legendary giants, being the Regis. So you can see pretty well how important this tree really is. But even further than this, while we know it isn't true, in Kalos, Mega Lucario is believed to be the first discovered Mega Evolution, until the discovery of Mega Rayquaza in Hoenn. It was the first recorded Mega Evolution to be achieved by Mega Stone, though we don't know the full story behind that. We've only been told that somebody saw it Mega Evolve, that Lucario reached a great new pinnacle of power, but that's it. There's no additional story. We don't know who that first trainer was, and
I don't know if we ever will, to be honest. And maybe it's just not really all that relevant. Maybe it's a nice little story that we can pass around and we don't really need to know the base of. And of course, while there are many ties from this Jackal to Anubis, this is all what I feel is the most relevant to what legends exist about our powerful Pokemon here. Due to its vicious nature and brutish temperament, Drapion is known as the Sand Demon, but is known to avoid fights with Hippowdon at least, because Hippowdon can kind of open its mouth to like a 6-foot height or some ridiculous number like that, I'm pretty sure. It's really big and it's really scary. But back to Drapion, it tends to go on rampages and causes havoc on anything in its way. It is powerful enough to scrap a car and has a carapace that is so tough it can deflect sword attacks. What this makes me think of is, imagine, if you would, a castle in the middle of a desert long before the first firearm was even created. They look over the walls and find that a Drapion is roaming the desert nearby. They batten down the hatches in fear, they hide, they avoid being seen or making noise, all to avoid the previous incident and the countless deaths that occurred when they once thought they could fight against such a demon. After all, how else would they know that its armored carapace could deflect swords? Up next, nice and simple, thanks to Abomasnow's ability to create entire blizzards while serving as a serious threat to anyone who would dare to bother Snover, Abomasnow is known as the Ice Monster or the Abominable Snowman. All it takes is for them to shake their body and they can cause complete whiteout conditions, which, I'll be real, that kind of blows our world's Abominable Snowman out of the water. I love me some cryptids, but that thing is basically just Bigfoot in the snow to my understanding, so not a lot to talk about here. One of my all-time favorite Pokemon, top 10 even, is Togekiss, who is a symbol of peace. They have long been known worldwide as bringers of blessings, being depicted on good luck charms since ancient times. It is said that Togekiss brings good luck simply by virtue of its existence. However, they only appear in peaceful places and have never been witnessed anywhere near conflict or turmoil, making their recent sightings exceptionally rare. And I genuinely feel like I've talked about Togekiss for the past 3 or 4 videos in a row, but that just goes to show just how significant it really is in a number of different contexts. It has its own paradise, or resides within a general Pokemon paradise, often even only appearing within the games after the major plotline is finished or in areas that we can deem to be peaceful. If you haven't seen my video on the secret homes of Pokemon, the secret home regions of them, I highly recommend that. If you want to know more intricate details about Togekiss, go check that out. Instead, we're going to move on to Frostlass, who I've also talked about in a number of different videos, so let's do this by memory and even tell you one of the tales of the Yuki-Onna, which matches up incredibly well with why Frostlass may come knocking to your door. Because this Pokemon loves more than anything to eat frozen human souls, or rather just frozen souls in general, and loves to particularly attack men. Ones that are unfaithful, or ones that are just not great people in general. This parallels our Yuki-Onna incredibly well, as the tale of the Yuki-Onna kind of goes as follows, or at least the one that I'm most familiar with goes as follows. A individual and his father or his friend were basically on a fishing trip. Winter comes in, it's just this really nasty cold. He goes into a cabin, and being in there, he ends up watching as the door opens and his friend is just flat out killed, just completely frozen by this woman in white. She leaves, but as she does so, she tells him, "You are to never tell anybody of my existence, or I will come back for you after sparing you as I have." Well, the guy wakes up. He thinks it was a dream at first, but he does realize that his friend is cold dead. He gets up, that matter is handled, and eventually he meets a very, very beautiful lady with really just white, alabaster skin. They hit it off, for lack of any other terms, and as they grow, they have a family together. They have children. They live a beautiful, happy life in a great home, and eventually, this night, this story comes back to him, and he looks at his wife and says, "You know, there's one thing I've never told you, and I've never told anybody else, because I wondered if it was a dream, and if I just barely survived because I got lucky, and the cold didn't kill me." And he tells her of this story, and his wife then transforms before him into that Yuki-Onna. That Yuki-Onna threatens him, tells him that he broke his promise, that he is lucky that he is the father of their children, and if he ever does anything to hurt a single hair on their head, she will kill him. I realize I think I missed somewhere in there why the one guy was unfaithful in some capacity or just wasn't a good guy, but I genuinely don't remember why, as that's kind of irrelevant to the rest of the story. I mean, she breaks into the cabin, kills a dude, and then betroths herself, or rather he betroths her, and they live a happy life until everything flips the script and he doesn't keep his promise because he misbehaved, which again goes back to the idea of Frostlass going after men who misbehave. So you can see all those little ties as they work their way into this Pokemon. Superior will only attack with full force against opponents that are unfazed by its piercing glare, which is said to be able to halt its foes' movements. This intimidating stare and its regal form have earned it the title Lord of the Forest, though this definitely has a deeper connection, as Superior is reminiscent in design and shape to royal regalia. The dark green design on its chest appears to form a fleur-de-lis, a French insignia commonly found on coats of arms belonging to European noble families and nations. This fleur-de-lis has been a massive piece within theorizing about Unova's past and even its relation to the great King AZ, as we see it in scriptures within the Abyssal Ruins, bringing a connection between France and New York into the world of Pokemon through Kalos and Unova. This relation does go deeper, of course, in a number of different ways, such as Liberty Garden, but we're not really here for that. It's just interesting to find that this one Pokemon and the Fleur-de-Lis has nearly single-handedly sparked and opened up a massive door to theories left, right, and center, allowing an incredible opportunity for lore that I hope to see expanded on or complete within Legends ZA, which you bet I will be streaming plenty of and creating videos on when it does come out. As an honorable mention, I have to tell you that within the Shield Dex, it is stated, the karate chops of a sock that's trained itself to the limit can cleave the ocean itself. To put that into perspective, while the math is incredibly rough, someone else did the math and found out it would take roughly 10 trillion joules of energy to just part the Red Sea in real life, and that was making a lot of assumptions. This was calculated for a 1 kilometer wide, 10 kilometer long section. The diameter of the Arctic Ocean is said to be 4,000 kilometers. It doesn't work this way, this immediate conversion, and it gives us such an incredibly rough estimate, but whatever, bear with me as it lands us with 40 quadrillion joules of energy used for Sawk to do this. That is multiple times stronger than the Fat Man bomb. Don't take the math too seriously. I'm personally not, because it is truly absurd and it's basically impossible to truly understand the sheer impact of such a thing without witnessing it, and I would rather not witness it, because I feel like you could feel the shockwaves from across the world if you're lucky that it doesn't just flat out kill you. This is why Sawk at least deserves the honorary mention, especially as this feels like a rumor, unless Sawk was Moses. Look, if Beyblade can do it, then so can Pokemon, but admittedly, before I confuse anyone, Sawk and Throh are Oni and had to be redesigned when the Weather Genies were created because they all looked too similar to each other. This helps explain why they have red and blue colors, which are indicative of the Oni as some of the colors that they were often commonly colored as. So there goes your real proper inspiration for them. Yet another that you should know, and if you don't, allow me the pleasure of telling you one of the best and most tragic stories of Pokemon as we speak about Zorua and its transformation into Hisuian Zorua. We've talked about the potential destructive power of Kitsune when we spoke on Ninetales, but there are plenty of other Kitsune out there. In the case of Zorua, it originally is very much modeled after the Kitsune that delight in mischief, pranks, or evil. They trick humans, possess them, cause them to behave strangely, and even assume their forms as the Kitsune live among us. Be weary of sharp-teethed claws or the swish of a tail in the event that the person you're talking to becomes too passionate or gets drunk and they lose control of their disguise, revealing these features. One trick is to even say mushy mush, as foxes don't have the ability to say it with the structure of their jaw, revealing their secret easily. If you fail to notice them, they could ruin their life, hurt your loved ones, or even replace you next. These are the rumors of the Kitsune, warnings and tall tales in our world, but within the world of Pokemon, they have tangible, truly 100% provable Kitsune in the form of Zora, who do all of these things. The only issue, though, is that Zora is not inherently evil. It just likes to have fun and needs food. It doesn't really truly replace anybody. So, it is through this dissonance of information and fear that we have people who act against it, drive it out of their towns and into the harsh and unforgiving Alabaster Icelands as they hunt it down. The winds whip at them, invisible icicles slicing through their fur with bitter cold, no food, no water, no protection from the elements, no love to save them. And so the Zora all canonically die out. But that bitter cold transforms within their bodies. As they die, they remember the pain that was caused to them only happened due to humanity chasing it with sticks of flame. And in a brilliant but horrifying transformation, the Zora is revived as a true ghost, a revenant on a mission. Hisuian Zora is born as a grudge-bearing Pokemon who fuels their attacks with bitter malice. Their illusions have tangibility. They can harm you now. Their Kitsune powers have strengthened, and once they do become Zoroark, they are so powerful that they harm themselves in the process of attacking. But there is one thing that is very interesting, and that is simply the Zoroark, while rare, can make friends with humans. It is through this that I believe the Hisuian Zora duo does not exist in the modern day, only because eventually humanity learned that they were wrong in attacking this Pokemon. And as the revenants that it is, these Hisuian Pokemon accepted the apology, seeing humanity has changed, and their rage quelled, they peacefully passed on as they deserved to. Thus ends their existence and prevents them from existing in the modern day Sinnoh. Even if they didn't just pass on and they do have regular biology in some capacity, then I would imagine that the Zora would never face such a harsh atrocity ever again, meaning their Hisuian form would rarely, if ever, be created ever again, as they would just eventually pass away. And at least in Kalos, we can thank Wulfric for tending to the Pokemon village to provide sanctuary from the bitter cold and any humans who would dare to harm other Pokemon. One of my favorite rumors in the Pokemon world involves Reuniclus, as it's stated that if you drink the liquid covering its body, you are granted wisdom. However, the liquid is extremely toxic. Nobody is going to drink that liquid, except for me, of course, if I was ever given the opportunity, as I am a glutton for knowledge and wisdom. Though, the joke here is twofold. You either drink it and gain the wisdom of, oh no, I shouldn't have done that, bleh, or you drink it, gain infinite wisdom, and then immediately die because it is against natural law of the world to bear infinite wisdom or knowledge. And it's also incredibly ironic to die after you learn everything, meaning you can't share it, which is part of the purpose of learning anything at all. So this just becomes a tall tale of the world, as Reuniclus is known to be incredibly intelligent, or at least have immense psychic power, which is usually tied to intelligence or wisdom. So of course you'd imagine that if you partake in the creature, you would be given a modicum of their power. In fact, this was a kind of a common belief in some places. The idea is that if you eat something like a heart, then your own heart is strengthened, or alternatively, it's similar to the false belief that you can take something like ivory from an elephant or the horns of rhinos and grind them down for a cure-all medicine. This is one of the very few instances in which I will say this, but that is genuinely a stupid belief in the modern day, only because we live in the modern day, and anybody who believes that should know better. All that does is harm the beautiful creatures of our world, and anyone who chooses to be ignorant on purpose, I'm gonna stand on my soapbox for a moment, is trash to me, especially when their actions harm others. Anywho, I'll step off the soapbox and we can move on. There's a very particular painting of Sir Fetch'd battling with Escavalier that is famous within the Galar region, and it turns out that this is inspired by a real artistic phenomenon. This one, I have to give credit to Kepler Nova on Reddit, as when I looked into this, their post came up immediately, and it led me down to find the answers I have for you. In the 13th and 14th centuries, especially in England, the major real-world inspiration for the Galar region, there was a strange, reoccurring scene in a lot of art, specifically depictions of knights fighting snails. Nobody really knows why this was so popular, and many historians have their own hypotheses for why there are so many dang pictures from the Middle Ages of knights fighting snails. Some people think it was symbolic in some way, others think it was just some kind of medieval equivalent of absurdist humor. The user even links a full article about this phenomenon from the Smithsonian. Sometimes the knight is mounted, sometimes not. Sometimes the snail is monstrous, sometimes it's tiny, sometimes the snail is all the way across the page, sometimes right under the knight's foot. Usually the knight is drawn so that he looks worried, stunned, or even shocked by this tiny foe. No one knows what exactly the scenes really mean. The British Library says that the scene could represent the resurrection, or it could be a stand-in for the Lombards, a group vilified in the early Middle Ages for treasonous behavior, the sin of usury, and non-chivalrous comportment in general. The Valiant Snails could be a commentary on social oppression, or it could just be medieval humor, says Guts Medieval. We're supposed to laugh at the idea of a knight being afraid of attacking such a heavily armored opponent. Silly knight, it's just a snail. All this honestly just actually reminds me of the snail of immortality. The idea is that you get immortality, but you will be hunted by a snail for the rest of your life, and if it touches you for even a second, you immediately die. And I remember distinctly thinking about this when I saw something just small and black on my wall while I lived in the second floor of an apartment. I look over and it's a slug climbing down my wall. I have not since ever seen a slug indoors ever again, let alone on the second floor of an apartment. All I'm saying is, if I was immortal and I touched that, I'd be dead. And if I ever do become immortal, there will be signs. I should hide it, but I will not. I'm just stupid like that. A common understanding is that jellicents are known to gather for prey during a full moon. Any fancy cruise ships, tankers, or crew that wander into the oceans where it dwells are never found again. But then we hear that it is rumored that it drags these ships or tankers into the sea and preys on its passengers. Not confirmed, rumored. It can create layers from sunken ships. It is known to feed on life energy, where the more it drains, the bigger its crown gets, and it's highly feared by fishers. We always tend to consider this Pokemon to be incredibly dangerous, and to be fair, I'm with you on that boat, but not in the boat that they're dragging down to the water, because I'm afraid of that and I don't want to die. But just like with many other Pokemon, it's time to partially put down our torches and pitchforks. Those aren't going to be very effective against them anyway, so I don't know why you're carrying those, but at least we can do so within Alola, because it is only within the Ultra Moon Dex that it does say that this is just a rumor. Meanwhile, in its original Dex entries, it absolutely states that it takes down ships and feeds on their crew. So it's up to you. Is this just another, tall tale of the sea, or is this a warning to keep us safe from the denizens of the deep? I accept it as more than just a rumor myself, I admit, because they're pretty terrifying creatures amongst many other water Pokemon in the oceans, and I would not want to take that risk. Ironically, despite the miserable nature of Axelgor after losing its shell, it is often featured as a main character in movies or comics to increase the popularity of these products. This is more of an honorable mention, but movies within the world of Pokemon are at least fun to consider, especially as I imagine Axelgor pulling off moves like a Power Ranger and having explosions appear behind it. It seems to be pretty strongly representative of them amongst a number of other tropes, of course, so you can imagine the impact this has on children who realize that their hero is a real Pokemon. You know what? Get Axelgor and Palafin hero form in a movie together, but either make Axelgor the vigilante, or make Palafin hero its evil form, like the evil Crimson Chin that appeared in Fairly Odd Parents a long time ago or something like that. Golurk is a Pokemon that deserves to be here as a powerful automaton that bears an immense amount of power and is most often only defeated by legendaries and champion trainers. This isn't even an exaggeration. Every fight Golurk is in, it is bodying others until it rises up against a legendary Pokemon, and only then does it get slammed down to the ground. It can fly at Mach speeds, turn into a cannon, and was invented as a laborer and protector of people and Pokemon. It served as artillery on ancient castles as it fired beams at those who would even dare to threaten the castle and faithfully follows its master's orders without question. It is rumored to be a perpetual motion machine, meaning as it moves, it creates its own infinite amount of energy, and then we get into the real fun parts, because this Pokemon is depicted as a statue in Parfum Palace, traveled with a Z, and is given the warning that if its seal were to ever be taken off, it would go on a rampage that would destroy friend and foe alike, as the city itself is then torn down. That last part is nearly a one-to-one story of the Golem of Prague who protected the Jewish people throughout the week. Though, on the Sabbath, from sunset on Friday to the sunset as on Saturday, a seal would be placed on it so that way it could rest. Unfortunately, the seal was once forgotten, and on what is supposed to be the day of rest in commemoration of God, the golem rampaged and caused great destruction. Even when we look at the two of them in design side by side, it becomes impossibly clear that the Golem of Prague is represented by our gargantuan Golurk. It's one of my absolute favorites for this rich inspiration, and honestly, it's incredibly terrifying as well when it goes on that rampage. And I love that too. It looks cool. In classic American fashion, we have Braviary, who is given the nickname the Hero of the Skies due to its extreme dedication for its friends. Aiding in its valiance, Braviary is extremely strong, capable of lifting a car and flying with it. However, due to its hot-headed and belligerent nature, it was rejected from being the flying taxi carrier in Galar in favor of Corviknight. Braviary is usually seen as a motif for different emblems. It is extremely aggressive for noble reasons, known for bravery and pride, fighting fiercely to help and protect its friends, and overall it's pretty fairly simple in the end, as it is just supposed to be the ideal symbol of benevolence, minus the hot-headed and aggressive nature it has, of course. You know, Hero of the Skies. Not sorry for the really stupid, like, super southern western accent. Similar to Tyranitar and even Zora, we have Hydreigon, who may be more misunderstood than we commonly believe. This is because it is said Hydreigon's reason for being ferocious is due to ancient people loathing it. The ancient people believed Hydreigon was evil incarnate, hence always attacking it. This, of course, would create a creature that is incredibly aggressive and would teach its children to be just as aggressive as a form of self-defense. They will eat through anything, be incredibly intelligent, and destroy everything that moves with violent power. But maybe if it wasn't attacked, and instead it was treated with kindness despite its destruction, it may be turned around similar to how Hisui and Zora could be. To follow this, we can even look at its shiny to help solidify that Hydreigon is inspired by Yamato no Orochi, the 8-headed dragon or serpent from Japanese mythology, who was a great destroyer and noted as an omnivore that took a princess for each head it had until it was eventually slain. This story seems to even seep its way into Pokemon, as I can next talk about Sylveon, which is a little bit earlier than when it actually appears in the decks, as I've been kind of going along. There's a Galarian fairy tale that describes a beautiful Sylveon vanquishing a dreadful dragon Pokemon, and when Sylveon was released, it was given special artwork showing it defeating Hydreigon, who, according to what others say, since I am not a competitive player, Hydreigon dominated the competitive scene in Generation 5 originally, and it is commonly accepted that Sylveon went up against Hydreigon at this point, to my understanding, especially considering it is incredibly weak to the fairy type, being a dragon dark type, so this is a very open and shut, simple fairy tale. Volcarona, as you likely know, was feared as the rage of the sun by ancient people, and it was even worshipped as a deity of fire in some places. They even referred to it as the embodiment of the sun. Volcarona's shrine in Relic Castle remains as a testament to the respect it commanded. Despite being worshipped in cold regions, it is unpopular in hot regions due to its burning body. It is also considered dangerous due to how it scatters hot burning scales, which can rob the surrounding air of its oxygen. What's interesting about this is that in the Relic Castle area, it's nothing but sand and heat. So why was it considered a sun god in such a harsh environment? Why does it have an altar dedicated to it? Well, we can assume a fairly realistic event to be that due to a great event, something that would blot out the sun in some capacity for an extended period of time, plant life began to wither and die away. With less plants being able to provide strong, deep roots to hold the soil, the winds would eventually wear down the soil itself, and eventually sand would become more present, creating a desert. The waters would deplete, planting crops would become harder, but before the end occurred, the people of Unova would take refuge in the Relic Castle, or at least some of them would. They would then look to Volcarona for their dose of daily sun, only to find out that they have created their own tomb. With doors closed to keep them safe, Volcarona would continue to burn up the oxygen within the castle until there would be none left, eventually bringing the grim end to the people who resided within it. And this is why we find a great massive Yamask within the castle. They cry not only in remembrance of who they once were, but also in remembrance of their horrifying fate. At least, that's my theory on it. Others have also stated that Volcarona's head and antennae bear a resemblance to the headpiece of Hathor, which depicts the horns of the goddess cradling a disc representing the sun in between them. And to state it clearly, yes, she was a solar deity that has been referred to as the Golden One. In addition, Volcarona's appearance may be loosely based on a seraph, a type of angel that is often associated with fire, as its name literally translates to burning one. Like Volcarona, seraphim are often depicted with 6 red wings and no legs. Now, another Pokemon that we won't discuss in detail here is that Mesprit is also often compared to the Seraphim in design and its overall demeanor, so while they are likely not connected at all, the two Pokemon, it is still fun to think about. I'm going to talk about Aegislash the same way that I did in my most recent video, as it possesses incredible spectral powers that allows it to manipulate people and Pokemon alike. It's able to detect the innate qualities of leadership, or so it says, and legend has it that whoever it recognizes as a worthy leader is destined to become king. In fact, this Pokemon has attended and served generations of kings. However, it was rumored to have also drained the life of one of them, causing his kingdom to fall alongside him. All of that information could be entirely influenced by Aegislash itself. What it likely did in the past was it took over an individual, helped them become king, and then continued to influence history as we know it, while making it seem as though it was all completed at the free will of the victim. Why do I believe this? Because Honedge is created when the spirit of an individual killed by a sword then possesses the sword that killed them. If I was a soldier being forced into war in the old days by a terrible king, I would absolutely bear so much spite and hatred that I would happily become the cursed weapon, work my way up, and take over the kingdom. Imagine the sheer amount of influence it would have, the history that is changed by this Pokemon, and yet we would never know because people just believed that it was helping choose worthy successors, when in reality it was likely taking control of them. And in fact, I realized that in the Shield entry, it states directly it once used its powers to force people and Pokemon to build a kingdom to its liking. So, yeah, I'm completely justified not trusting these Pokemon and assuming that they shaped history and will never understand how. Along the same lines, and created in the same generation, we have Malamar, who directly states its hypnotic powers are dangerously strong, and anyone who falls under its control loses their memory surrounding the event. And it's said that their hypnotic powers played a role in certain history-changing events. And that is yet another entry that specifically comes from Pokemon Shield. Pokemon's medieval times must have been real rough. Drapion sieges, Aegislash taking over kingdoms, Malamar changing history as we know it, except we don't know it because it wiped our minds of it. History in general within the world of Pokemon may just be horribly tainted, and that's why we know so little about parts of history. I mean, these Pokemon, or at least Honedge, appeared in the Great War, so they may have had a massive influence on that as well. And, of course, because, you know, depending on the Pokemon that we're looking at, some of this may have never been recorded due to the control of the Pokemon over humanity. Trevenant is a seemingly horrifying creature that has often been rumored to trap people within their forests until they pass to the afterlife. Though that rumor was created by lumberjacks who wished only to harm the forest in an attempt to create widespread fear of these Pokemon and an eventual retaliation against them. They, of course, would use Fire-type Pokemon in order to drive Trevenant away, and then the Lumberjacks would just chop, chop, chop as many trees as they please. In reality, though, Trevenant is a kind protector that would even give wood freely to those who need it, namely Pokemon. It will serve out its days controlling the forest through a nervous system of sorts as it connects its roots to the surrounding area. These sorts of stories exist in many forms, from Trents or Triads to Dryads and so much more. These are creatures born of the forest and intend to protect the forest until the end of their days by any means necessary, as they also serve to protect the lives of those that are deemed weak and are often trampled upon, because somebody has to stick up for the little guy. In the Alola region, Alolan Dugtrio is regarded as a feminine deity of the earth, and taking its hairs is thought to bring bad luck. The people of Alola are known to fall to their knees and bow in respect to any Alolan Dugtrio they encounter. In this region, there is superstitious belief that several Alolan Dugtrio will emerge out of their holes whenever a volcanic eruption occurs. Older residents of Alola will flee instantly upon witnessing this unusual sight. It is believed that it is capable of detecting movements underground that indicates an impending eruption. Due to this, they tend to come above ground in fright as a warning. This has been suspected to be in relation to Pele's hair, a thin volcanic glass formed near Hawaiian volcanoes. The lore of taking its hairs may be in reference to modern Pele's curse, while its reputation as a feminine deity may be a reference to Pele herself. Pele's curse is the belief that anything natively Hawaiian, more particularly sand, rock, or pumice, will bring bad luck on whoever takes it away from Hawaii. One version about the legend's genesis is this: a disgruntled park ranger, angry at the number of rocks that were being taken from the islands by visitors, said that Pele would curse them with bad luck should they take anything. Another version, often told, is that bus drivers, tired of the dirt and grime brought on their buses by tourists' collection of rocks, started the story of the beginning of each tour to discourage the rock collecting. The myth has caught on, told as if it were an original Hawaiian taboo, and every year countless tourists send items back to Hawaii in order to escape the awful luck that Pele has caused them. If anybody is Hawaii and can continue to confirm that information, that would be really fun and really cool. So although the legend itself is probably of 20th century origin, the removal of rocks as souvenirs is now frowned upon by Hawaiians, of course, because it is illegal to remove minerals from within a US national park. There are countless reasons why this is illegal, as the majority of them relate back to preserving the environment itself. I worked on a rock beach, and those rocks help ensure that less erosion occurred throughout the year, and I had to stop plenty of people from taking said rocks home for the sake of the beach's health. So, I get it. The people of Alola and Galar fear Wishiwashi and call it the Demon of the Sea, due to its school form. Even the fearsome Gyarados and Wailord are known to flee from it when it enters this school form. There's nothing incredible here, to my understanding, just a fantastic way to flip the food chain on its head by making the bottom rung able to swim to the top. It takes the movements of schools of fish that are meant to originally confuse predators and turns it into a full fighting form meant to chase them away, and gives them the name of Demon of the Sea. A calm day at the beach is turned into a disaster thanks to Palisand the Beach Nightmare, a creature that possessed people and Pokemon into building its castle body higher with sand. Its curse growing stronger as it will eventually take prey below the surface of its sands and steal away their life energy until only bones remain. They can become larger than buildings, and with their ability to whip up sandstorms, we are lucky that they seem to only naturally appear in very rare instances. Oddly enough, they appear in Loop Lagoon and Galar, and within 2 different areas of Paldea, probably because Alola is a collection of islands with plenty of available water resources to spray them down and reduce their threats and basically make it so that they don't appear naturally in at least any of the games. Imagine taking a nap and you wake up inside of one of these things. Your life is forfeit. According to legend, Kommo-o's glittering scales are meant to drive away a great darkness. The reason it seeks strong opponents is also said to be a quest for power to defeat the darkness. There are 2 things that most people might associate with Kommo-o here. One being the Mo-o, but there's a lot of arguments against it, especially as the Mo-o are female only, or have most often been found to be female. But Kommo-o live in a difficult ravine similar to that of the Impossible Ravine in one story of the Mo-o, while also being able to change their surroundings just by lifting their arms, similar to the Kommo-o being able to change the weather. Though the more apt comparison as to why it drives away darkness is because of its tail, which, while covered in scales, resembles that of a kakara, which was originally used as a noisemaker to announce a monk's presence and fight away animals. It was adapted for use as a rhythmic instrument during chanting and sutra recitation, and for use as a weapon. There are other uses for it, such as to break ignorance, call out to all beings. It could represent the Four Noble Truths, 6 Perfections, or 12-fold chain of cause and effect, and just generally there's a lot of significance here that can be brought back to such a simple and quick entry we read from Kommo-o itself and its design. Don't be surprised, though, in the future if we see a new region where it is worshipped by monks as an avatar of their god one day. Think like Bellsprout Tower, but then throw in Kommo-o while you're at it. Hydreigon has a massive mix of witches that make up what it is inspired by, especially as it is specifically nicknamed the Forest Witch. It has a solitary and reclusive nature, emitting psychic power strong enough to cause headaches as a method to deter others from approaching and disturbing it. It has also been observed that it dislikes loud noises, tearing apart perpetrators with the claws on its tentacle as a result. And as shown in the episode Must Be Our Heroes and the Witch, Hydreigon plays with people's minds and creates illusions, deceiving them for its own pleasure. Due to its long hair obstructing its floating body, Hydreigon's main forms of locomotion are levitation and short-distance teleportation. A number of witches it's likely inspired by are those that are told as stories to disobedient children, telling them that if they don't stay quiet, sleep, or generally behave, a witch such as the Baba Yaga will take them away or punish them severely. Even further, with it being covered in hair, as the majority of its body is kind of just hair, it is also believed that a witch's hair is the source of their power. The longer the hair, the more powerful the magic. And it may also take inspiration from Hatara, a female forest troll or race of giants from Finnish mythology. Hatara is also the Finnish name for cotton candy, which may be the basis of Hydreigon's color scheme of pink, white, and blue, the main 3 colors of cotton candy, and now I'm starting to wonder if anybody's tried to eat her hair. But the last notable piece of information for now is that she has a very tower-like frame and point to the top of her head, which of course doubles as a witch's hat. Though, through this, we have the potential of Rapunzel's fairy tale being here due to the long hair flowing from top to bottom, and this Pokemon just really has a lot going on. So maybe it doesn't vibe check as many people into the ground as we are made to believe, and maybe it is just one big fairy tale, one big warning to tell children to shut up and go to sleep, essentially, which I would appreciate, not the shut up and go to sleep part, but you know, I have strong emotions, and I would rather not get pummeled for simply being very happy. Once more, we have a short and sweet one with Palafin, the Pelagic Protector, also known as the Hero of the Ocean. It has both of those titles. This is simply because the sense of justice within its heart and the cheers of people around it give Palafin strength. In theory, with enough belief and cheers, I imagine this Pokemon could have infinite power. You know, maybe like a little Goku Spirit Bomb action kind of happening here. But in all seriousness, it is just a classic comic book hero, but as a dolphin. And it's a pretty powerful Pokemon when it does get into that hero form within the games even. In what I consider to be a hilarious twist of fate, it is said that supposedly the regrets of a tea ceremony master who died before perfecting his craft lingered in some matcha and became Poltergeist, the matcha revenant. I couldn't really figure out for sure whether traditional matcha was actually difficult to make, or if we are supposed to laugh at the ceremony master who couldn't complete the matcha if it is super easy, considering that when this Pokemon does evolve, it is said that Sinistcha has terrible tasting matcha, meaning that even in its afterlife, this dude just cannot rest. Though to take that even further, matcha might be considered to taste terrible to others since it does have a bit of a bitterness to it. I've only had it as part of a sweeter drink, but I've also personally enjoyed it as bitter flavors I kind of like, so I'm just getting a lot of mixed signals here personally. Should I point and laugh, or should I feel sorry for this guy? I'm gonna probably point and laugh, I'm not gonna lie to you, but I'll let you decide what you want since I have Golden Retriever brain, and I'm gonna forget about it as soon as I stop talking about it. Our final Pokemon is one that I have rarely mentioned across all my videos, Blood Moon Ursaluna, known as the Blood Moon Beast. It is stated that this Ursaluna is the only one known to exist, and is unique in that its altered appearance cannot be attributed to evolution or form change. The name of this unique Ursaluna, of course, comes from the distinct red moon mark on its forehead. This Ursaluna is very old, having used to live in the Hisui region a long time ago until it drifted across the seas and arrived in Kitakami, where it made residence in the land's timeless woods. It gained special powers due to adapting to the hard environment of Kitakami. It is highly alert and rarely makes itself seen, but it tends to appear during foggy nights. It can see in the dark with one of its eyes, and the mud it controls is as hard as iron. I've always seen this thing as some sort of living corpse, but if I step away from that train of thought and just kind of, open up the possibilities a little bit, then we have a predator that has gone through incredible hardships and has adapted in order to overcome all possible obstacles, including mankind itself. It also seems to be based on Onikuma, bears that have transformed into yokai after living for an exceptionally long time. Onikuma are known to walk on two legs and continue to grow, reaching sizes much larger than even the largest natural bears. This idea of long-lived creatures turning into yokai is seen with a number of different creatures, so this is of no surprise. Most other Pokemon have a lifespan. Even if it is long, they have a definitive lifespan. But this Ursaluna has surpassed the seas, the lands, and time itself, as it now resides in the Timeless Woods, otherwise known as Eternity Forest. And of course, we are brought there by Perrin, who is suspected to be the descendants of both Adaman and Irida, thanks to a number of visual qualities that they have. Either way, this not only ties it back to Hisui, in which Ursaluna was first introduced and this specific Ursaluna is from, but also brings in Adaman, who specifically belonged to the Diamond Clan, who worshipped Dialga, the god of time. A very interesting coincidence within the world of Pokemon, but an intentional one in design and creation. With that, we've explored the many secret legends, myths, stories, and titles of Pokemon that tell us so much more about the world while also relating back to our own. Do you have any supporting evidence I missed, or any arguments against anything that I said? How about any fun cryptids or any other fun myths or stories? Share with me in the comments, as I not only love reading the comments when I'm not working, but comments and watch time are the best ways to help boost the reach of a video and a channel as told by YouTube itself. In addition, if you'd like to go the extra mile, become a member for as little as $3 a month for a number of different perks, such as hearing your name at the end of every single video, which we're going to go do right now. Thank you to all of our members of the channel, starting with the Gods of Hope, Krill Fantasy 14, Heals for Life, Biggins, Vatty, Nit, Buzz, and Summer, and then all of our champions, Andrew, Mark, Nias, Costa, and Joshua Biggins Wilson. Then the Knights of the Court Combo, Doubles, Shiny Gems, Sarah, Bruce, Waves, Moth, Romance, Vatty, Lemon, Fix My Nitrogen, Krill Fantasy 14, Pile, Muse, Artwell, Annie Stone, Allen, Heals for Life, Blue Dalek, and Warren Hemphill. Then all of our Wanderers, to Marco, Gaming Grooves, Big Brick, Macebreaker, Rainbow, Hungry, Goat, Malachi, Zalmaki, Saffron, Queen, Clark, GA, Zoomier, Gaia, Joe Knows, Not That Important, Melly vs. the World, Xanthar, Dynamic King, Daniel Trube, E. Rick Rips, Michael Gibbons, Brian Millie Jers, Mr. Diagonal Yips, Ray Mulrian, Lay, Sir Casual Ghoul, Hyrule Skibidi, Ariana Scobie, 9L707, Ezra Apollo, Cynical, A23, Sorwin, Ruthless Hauser, Evil Chan, The Copper Smith, Jay Gill, Ruby, Suthian Kai, Lucky Charms, Bobs, Elizabeth, Chris P. Backen, Lendil Teguesta, Elijah Tidwell, Tyrone Jones, B. Ribby, Where Blaine, Cord, Swish, Micah 626 Gaming, Nicole, Manassian, Kristen, Sandwich Boss, Emmy, whatever this is, Vanny, Samaru, Max Supreme, Odie saying them with me, Desparty Emperor, Michael Stein, Lolan Figment, Lost Wisteria, I Lost My Place, Medico TH73, Spurgalicious, Sydney House, Abdallah Aladi, Tamarkle, Professor Abon, Miss Zora, Dakota Couch, Brad Sundimer, Drixel, Carl Jean, Hunter Owl, Sanka Sum, Rebecca Connor, Hune, Jappy, W, Memento Mortem, Corn, Marshy, Edward Kosowski, Fedeka Fox, Hunter, Screeberg, Hag, Cadabra, King Pie, Check the Frost, Reshy, Simon, Addy, C, Jacob Square, DJ Monk 23, Squid, Water, Rice Smith, Gamer, Bad Dragonite, Just JM, Star S, MD, Horse with a Cocktail, Hand, Haybell, Yeats, Lumiel, Gwen Dolan, East Getter, 072, Andrew Frost, Peak Anonymous, Summon, Sloth, Knock, Nguyen, Ian Wright, Bigot, C Nice, Corner to Common, Sealy King, Betty Creeper, Sarah Chan, Jojo Thavorian Scars, Daniel Tracy, Garrett Hoffman, Rosif, Dylan Peters, Malachi Burkhardt, Scott, Carlisle, and Heather Weiser. Thank you all for being members of the channel. If you want to hear your name at the end of every single video and support content just like this, then please do become a member of the channel, as I intend to make more content as the channel continues to grow and see everything that I'm able to do with it. But with that then, as always, Odie, would you like to say the line? That's not how the line goes. I'm sorry. Don't do anything I would do. Don't do anything I would do. Please be nice to each other. I love you, and I'll see you next time.
Bye! I did it with the wrong hand!